Everyone, welcome to the Hoppy Hanukkah Craft Beer Experience presented by City Brew Tours. My name is Todd Summers.
And I am Chad Brodsky, and we are your drinking buddies for this evening to celebrate the end of the 8 crazy flights. Like that? Like what I did there?
I do see what you did there, Chad. Can't believe it's over.
I know. We did it a little differently this year just because it was a different type of Hanukkah. When's the last time Hanukkah went through New Year's?
Good question. I should have looked that up. But yeah, it feels crazy late. Doing a show on New Year's Day felt like it was going to be kind of tricky. So here we are. Um, Now the question is, did you save a beer for us, Chad?
I saved the last beer because Von Trapp Brewery is a favorite of mine. So from its Vermont
What
origins.
we've given some tours of On Trap. Well, I'm gonna open this and I'm gonna drink it. Any favorites, Chad? Any beers you want to talk about from the box?
Well, just before we jump into that, I think just your housekeeping, Todd. You always do the housekeeping. I feel like some people might be tuning in for the first time. Most likely they're not,
You know what, Chad?
but just in case.
I've been doing housekeeping for the last 2 weeks. My house is a mess. I can't stomach another minute of it. You should see my kitchen. It's just like you clean dishes and then they just appear out of nowhere. But how this will work tonight, since it's the last night, any beer you got is totally fine with us. We're gonna drink the Vienna Lager because it's what we saved. Some of you maybe have less willpower, or you weren't expecting to be done. You were maybe expecting a ninth beer, which is totally fine. Use the chat
Chalmers beer,
for.
should we do that next year? Maybe. We'll see.
Might have just cracked the code. Use the chat for all of your questions and commentary. Any favorite beers? Excuse me. Any favorite beers that you had? Just make sure that you flip that little icon so that where it says to, it says to everyone, so that everyone can read what you write, and that you're not just sending it to me and Chad. Because as much as we care, we want you to share it with everyone else. And you can use the Q&A, but we're gonna focus on the chat. So that being said, where's everyone tuning in from? And did you have a favorite beer from the box this year?
I also want to know did anyone get a Hanukkah gift that they're very excited to share what they received?
I learned a long time ago, because my parents are psychologists, that sometimes when people ask a question, it's because they want to be asked that question. So, Chad, did you receive a Hanukkah gift that you're very excited about and want to share with everyone?
Is it count if I gave myself the Hanukkah gift?
That's not really how that works, but yeah, sure.
I bought myself a new water bottle, and it's
Is
called
it
Brewmate,
smart?
So I think it might be meant for beer, but I'm drinking water out of it.
Is it like one of those things where you can hide a beer in it?
No, but that would be awesome. No, it's just it met all my criteria of water bottles, so I was very excited about it. Oh, we got Saratoga, Chicago, uh, California, Massachusetts, Baltimore.
Baltimore,
Love it.
Daniel, don't we know it?
Oh,
Yeah, this Vienna Lager is an absolute stunner.
Todd, if you had to ask what my favorite style of beer is, what would you say it is?
Hmm. Well, I know that one of your all-time favorites is the Boston Lager.
Correct.
So what's your
And
favorite kind of beer?
what's the Boston Lager?
I mean, it's kind of amber.
It's the Vienna Lager.
It's Vienna Lager. It's great.
And
It's perfect.
so this is one of my favorite styles of beer.
I mean, that's how that works. It's also Sam Adams, also my mother-in-law's favorite beer. So shout out to Cindy. Not
Oh,
Jewish.
okay.
So
Plan for tonight.
plan for
We've
tonight.
got awesome guests. Very excited. You may have saw them for a brief moment. They'll be coming back soon. We've got some trivia, some good questions for them. And then we also want to just talk through the beers because it's over. The party's over until 2025. Well, ooh, that's weird. Can't say that. Can't
Two
say
Hanukkahs 1 year.
two Hanukkahs 1 year. Amazing.
I'll have to rebudget. So let's we've got two brewing industry Jews and brewing industry sort of veterans joining us this evening. And something special about this is that they're not from the production side. So we're not going to ask them their favorite style of beer to make, favorite style of beer they're most proud of making, the one that they find themselves drinking the most often. But we have people who are a little more attached to the lifestyle side of beer, a little bit more in the industry as a whole, were it. So we've got a very, very revered beer journalist. His name is Josh Bernstein, and the head of beer purchasing for the largest craft beer store, period, Halftime Beverage is in New York State. So fellas, let's pull you back. Let's see those faces. And oh, there's a face.
There is a face. We are faces.
I was still muted. We're back.
I love it. So I'm gonna wait. Did Chad just leave? Okay,
He's
he's
back.
back. That's not a bit. We've done that as a bit before. That one was very much not a bit. So I'm just gonna keep the show rolling because who knows what Chad's doing. But Josh, I'll do your intro first. Joshua M. What's the M stand for? Am I allowed to ask?
Michael. Josh
It's my middle
Bernstein.
name.
Yeah, look at that. Josh Bernstein's kind of like the Joe Smith of Jews. And so when I was starting off as a journalist many years ago, there were many confusing moments of my name getting mistaken. So it was like, I'm going to own the middle initial.
I love that. My parents thought Michael sounded athletic as a middle name. That's a true story. Joshua M. Bernstein is an award-winning author and beer, spirits, food, and travel journalist. He's written scores of newspapers, magazines, and written for scores of newspaper, magazines, and websites, including the New York Times, might have heard of it, Bon Appetit, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, Saveur, Food and Wine, Men's Health, A Fine Pair, Wine Enthusiast, and Men's Journal, amongst
Many
others.
things.
Amongst others. You're the author of 6 books. That's more than Chad's read. Brewed Awakening, The
Can
Complete
you
Beer
hear
Course.
me? Because I want to rebuttal that. Can you hear me?
Chad's a voracious reader. He likes the self-help books, we know. Brewed Awakening, The Complete Beer Course, Homebrew World, Drink Better Beer, and most recently, The Complete Beer Course was released in June of 23, and he wrote a comprehensive article on kosher law and craft beer for craftbeer.com. That was in 2023. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. So let's dive into let's lean into the Adam. We'll introduce you here in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about kosher beer for a second. One, can you give us the skinny, which is something we sort of talk about every year? So can you give us just the high level overview of what makes beer kosher, and then when you started to study kosher beer production, what's one thing that surprised you?
I mean, if you think about that, if you think about the Reinheitsgebot, the Bavarian purity law, if you think about that with like hops, hops, grain, water, yeast, if a beer sticks with just those 4 ingredients, like chances are it's going to be kosher on there. It's when you start mixing in and adding other ingredients on there, like lactose and, oyster shells, and even some fruits like grapes and so on, things get a little bit tricky on there too. And so, I mean, it's one of these moments where, if you're sticking to sort of like classic lagers or beers without any bells and whistles, you're totally okay. But the American craft beer movement is built upon the idea of trying anything and everything. And so it can be a little bit tricky if you're looking to keep kosher and drink craft beer simultaneously. And so you can go through certification processes and all these things. Not every brewery, there are a fair amount of breweries that want to go through the ability to do that. And that will allow them to be sold anywhere and everywhere. You can be the go-to beer at bar mitzvahs and weddings and whatever. But I mean, it's definitely an extra step that you have to be conscious about, and you have to think about this if you'd like to do that. But at its core, it's another food safety regulation, and the beer industry is built upon food safety, hygiene standards altogether. So it's just another kind of like box to check if you truly do want to have do want to create and serve kosher craft beer.
And if you look, and every year, all of the beer that while we might have some kosher beer in our boxes, we do reach out to all the breweries to make sure that we're having beers in these boxes that do meet at least that parv, that are parv as opposed to having additives to their beer, like Josh said. So something that you can at least count on from us in that respect. But it'll be very hard to find to get a lactose sour beer in our Hanukkah box. Probably not going to happen. I think what's it called? Did it? Jeremy Cowan. We had a sour
The Sufgan Yolk
Sufgan
beer,
Yolk
right?
beer. So that was like the one-off, but pretty
That
hard
was
to
cool.
find those.
And I think it was technically malt liquor.
Hmm. Yeah. The regulations get really interesting too, because I mean you can't age like a beer in a wine barrel unless a wine barrel formerly held kosher wine. So it's like all these kind of like rightfully persnickety regulations on there that you have to like pay attention to. So it's not just something as simple as being like, well, I'm not going to use like lactose and oysters today, but you're like, I want to make this great like vinous wine barrel aged saison. That would not be kosher unless there's kosher wine barrels, which I don't even know how you go about sourcing like old kosher barrels. That's not my strength.
There are definitely
I have the
a bunch
largest
of
collection in the world.
there's definitely a bunch of Facebook comments that are of users in a tizzy over our beers not being all kosher in the Hanukkah box. But to make a Hanukkah box with all kosher beer, I don't know if you'd want to drink it.
And
It's just not going to be that good.
it's also like sort of logistically prohibitive. It's very challenging. And every year we talk to Sonia Marie. This is actually, I think, the first year that we haven't
First
talked to
year.
Sonia Marie from Lycum in Portland because of how we switched it up. And every year, except for this year, we've sort of asked her, like, tell us a little bit about the process to get the brewery all set. And she talks for it's not an easy process. It's not like one day you're just like, hey, we want to be kosher certified. No, that's not it. She's always checking in with her rabbi. She's always like making sure that everything is done to the letter of the law. And one, there just aren't a lot of breweries that can do that at scale. And two, for us to then source the beer, that's another
That's
thing.
Adam's job. Next year, Adam, we want some Lycum in there again.
I feel like you're putting
That's
you
a
on the
great
spot.
that's a great
Intro from
segue,
Adam.
Chad. Good job. Adam Wallach, Director of Purchasing at Halftime Beverage, which Halftime's fun facts started in 2002, 22 years ago, which is older than me. There are 2 locations, correct?
Correct.
And they have, across the 2 locations, they have over 5,000 different beers that you could have, which is more beers than I'd be curious how many people in the chat have more than 5,000 beers checked in on Untapped if you're into that. And it's become more than home of the world's largest beer collection. Member of the community, you've had your own festivals. You've thrown some virtual beer events like Extreme Beer Face Cyberfest, Cyberspace. That's amazing. Clearly industry heavyweights. So my question is, how do you handle the beers that you want to drink versus your job of selling beer to other people? Can you just fill your store with only beers you want to drink, or do you have to be nice? How do you balance that professionally?
I wish I could. It's a delicate balance, like figuring out what people want to drink. If I had it my way, it would all be lambic and lager. But we do sell a ton of hazy IPA. Got to carry the popular stuff. But we have something for everyone, of course. 5,000 beers. Got to have something for everybody.
And do you feel like I hope your boss isn't listening, so this is amongst friends. Do you feel like you seek out styles that you care about? Like, is there a little bit more extra love? Like, I think everyone, no matter what you're selling or whatever your job is, you kind of get like googly eyes over certain projects or certain things that really interest you. Do you like if you're searching out rare lambic? Is there a different fire than when
Oh, for
your
sure.
IPA guys are like, hey, we got more hops this time, which is I'm sure
100%.
how they
I
sell it.
mean, we get some Cantillon, once or twice a year. I get very excited for that. But there, the hypey lager breweries like Schilling or OEC, when we get that kind of stuff, like weird stuff from them, not just the regular stuff, I get very excited. Especially when we get like weird draft only versions, and it's cool for
Yeah.
sure.
Interesting question. Like IPAs are always going to sell, of course, in modern beer. But like, what styles, I guess, are you surprised to see maybe trending? Do you see a pushback toward like, are people interested in like adjunct-free stouts again? Do people want to drink amber ales? What styles you kind of see that maybe percolating that we may not think of as being something that
Definitely. I wouldn't say like a big shift yet, but starting to see shifts back to the older world styles. ESBs and pub ales are doing a lot better. Cream ale has done really well lately.
hmm,
Um, but we've done really well the past 2 years with seasonals, and they kind of died off for a while. Like Christmas beer did great this year. Great. Just
The that OEC Dapple in our box,
killer beer.
that was a great beer. And that is kind of that for many people probably haven't, I don't know if they've had an English dark mild ale before, but that would be kind of what people would consider those old world styles that are just delicious. Big fan of milds.
Agreed.
I went to Schilling's Oktoberfest a couple years in a row, a few years back, and there are some interesting beers you can get in Littleton, New Hampshire from those guys. So I get that for sure. Um, I would love to talk about volume, which is something that always interests me. I've always been so curious. So like on any given week, if you have 5,000, are you turning, how many of those are you turning over? How many cases is that how you buying it? Are you buying kegs? Are you buying bottles? I'm sure you're buying everything. How do you quantify your purchasing amounts?
I mean, a lot of it depends on the time of year, of course. Like we're going in the colder months are generally slower, especially in store. We do a lot of e-commerce. That's kind of our bread and butter these days. But the slower months are the colder months. Um, there's some stuff where you can only buy a case of it. That's all there is. So that's what I'm gonna get. I do bring in kegs. We do have 22 draft lines for like growler fills and crowler fills, but we also have like a large selection of grab and go 1/6 kegs for customers to get for their kegerators, like 5-gallon kegs. So I try and keep that stocked. I have like a minimum threshold that I try and hit, like try and have like 15 to 20 different sixtels on hand at any given time all throughout the year. And then just trying to keep the shelves full. That's really the goal. There's no such thing as too much beer, I'd say. Like if it doesn't sell one week, we'll just sell it the next week. Holidays are huge. Obviously, we just came out of holiday season, so we brought in a ton of beer and sold a ton of beer throughout the holidays. I mean, I'd say a big week, like a couple thousand cases probably.
Wow.
But it's there's an ebb and flow for sure.
Sounds like a lot to have to manage. 1,000+ cases, thousands of cases. We're
Two
buying.
follow-up questions. You
Sure.
mentioned growler fills. I purchased a reusable growler in February of 2020, which was then no longer allowed to be filled. So I sort of think that the death of the refill, like of growler fills, was partially my fault because of COVID. But are you seeing that pick back up? Is that the same, handful of people show up and they get their growler fills, or do you see that as a part of the business that is worth investing your time in?
I don't know if this is like implied in your question at all, but we definitely see the majority of our draft sales through crowlers, so not refillable.
Growlers,
That
not
wasn't
growlers.
implied. That's
The
that's very interesting. I guess it makes sense.
we're this I'm based in the store in southern Westchester by the city, and we're right by the train station that goes to Grand Central. So a lot of people grab the big cans to hop on the train and get jacked up. I will pat myself on the back. We do have a sick draft list, so I would put my draft list up against like almost any bar in town. So we kind of hang our hat on that, and people do come for special stuff for sure.
That train drinking in the Northeast is just so fascinating. I mean, the beers you can get at the train, like Penn Station and Grand Central, like Amtrak. I remember talking to Sam from Dogfish Head years ago, and like one of their biggest volume accounts for 90 Minute was a Northeast corridor for Amtrak. I mean, it was just like, people wanting like 90 minute in a 90-minute ride, whatever. And it was just like it offered the bang for their buck, what they wanted. But I mean, it's just like it's not something you think of when you're in other parts of the country that may not have as much dense mass transportation or laws that allow it. But train drinking and like, what you can do if you're by a train station is pretty surprising.
Yeah, we see the same trend with like the stovepipe 19 2-ounce single serve cans too, like the tall, skinny ones. People just flock to those higher alcohol, cheap ones just to get jacked up on the train.
Get through the train ride on amp.
That's okay. I think it's like, look, I mean, it's so funny to look back, the demonization of like with malt liquor back in the 80s and 90s, and the ABVs of those were like 5, 6, maybe 7. 19.2s of 9% beer, I mean, are just like, by a magnitude far greater than that too. And it's I don't know, it's like the craft beer market, it's kind of like taking it away. It's like, yes, I would like alcohol and flavor, and it's just like laying everything pretty bare. And that's I think that's okay. It's like you're not kidding anybody about what was there for. It's like I'm going to a concert. I would like 9% of 19.2 ounces of 9% beer, and then I'm good to go.
We were talking to Matt from Fiddlehead in our last, and he was saying 19.2 is one of his biggest SKUs. When did that change? When did that 19.2 can come onto the scene when you start to see those trends happening? Because I feel like it hasn't, I don't know where it is right now within that trend line. Like I go to a local brewery, I can't get 19.2
I
cans typically.
I just looked and I can tell you I wrote a story about it in 2019, and we started seeing things taking off in a big way. So, back then, pre-pandemic, things started shifting on there too. And part of that was really about carving out new territory in gas stations, convenience stores, grab and go cooler sets, things that may not have been typically been like, you wouldn't typically go to 7-Eleven to get craft beer, right? I mean, but then all of a sudden you stick like a 19.2 of IPA in there, and it's like it becomes a place to grab and go. And I think the ABV and the size, if you go to a convenience store, it's all about the immediate needs, right? You go there to get a Red Bull to like wake up, go there to get a coffee, you go there to get a taquito or a roller dog. And you go there, you're like, most things bought at convenience stores are consumed within an hour. So you're going there to get like 19.2 ounces of like attitude adjustment. And it's like, that's what you're there for. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just
And
like the format, the size fit this new need spectrum for people.
and 19.2 in particular is because of a change in regulation. Is it a shelf? Is it a cooler space thing where that's as how much you can fit in a standard size refrigerator?
I can't speak to that specifically, but people have like breweries have always messed around with like formats and sizes and that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. It's like you've got like 19.2s and 22-ounce bottles and 22-ounce, bombers, and like even like
Hmm.
Bud has like 25-ounce cans or things like that. It's just sort of like I can't speak exactly why that number particularly, but there's lots of available formats and sizes out there, and companies are always kind of like trying to see what's gonna stick.
I remember I feel like the first 19.2 was the Founders All Day IPA. That's one of the first ones I saw
I
out
think
there.
Dale's Pale was the first
Oh,
one.
Dale's
Oscar Boys
Pale.
was the
Yep.
big one.
Yeah,
Kind of
I'm looking back at the story I did, and it was like a Revolution Brewing. with like Anti-Hero, Lagunitas, Little Something Something, stuff like that.
I
Do you have
remember
a
when you could get
favorite?
little something something in a little jug thing in Chicago. That was weird. I liked that.
I
I will
I
for anybody
like the
that
red stripe bottles. Switchback did some of
here's a
those. Those were
I,
awesome
I just put a
formats.
link to a story I did like back in 2019. No
So
paywall.
speaking of story, do you have a favorite story that you've written?
Oh God, I have no idea. I mean, I've been doing this for I've been a journalist since 2000, professionally speaking. I've done like literally thousands of stories, I mean, over that time. I mean, like, I think in the last couple of years, some fun stories I've done. One I did this fall, looking at hop harvest in Yakima, Washington, and looking at the intersection of kind of, a lot of the workers working the fields are, Mexican American, Latin American, like migrant workers coming through, and that's really influenced the food that's available within Yakima County, which is now majority Latino in Yakima County. And so there's all these amazing taco trucks and tamale stands and everything there. And then what's happening during hop harvest in particular is that there's this sort of like a lot of the farms, Siegel Ranch started up. Farms have like these taco parties that bring brewers in, you celebrate the harvest. And so it's like this really neat intersection of culinary traditions and the harvest and the workers all together. So I wrote that story this fall, and that was something that, I've been like I was really excited to go out there and check it out and write. That was super duper cool. I did a fun story a couple of years ago for the Times looking at sort of the intersection of wrestling and beer and how that plays out. So, beer was considered like day class A, and then as like the WWF, like the professional wrestling organizations didn't want to have anything to do with it, even though Stone Cold Steve Austin was like crushing beers and doing that. They didn't want to have advertisements with it because it seemed like lower class or trying to present this different image. And fast forward to today, and like craft breweries are hosting beer festivals where there's wrestlers, like amateur wrestling groups are using taproom spaces for things. I mean, wrestlers own, like Stone Cold now owns a beer brand and Onward. And so it's like this, like looking at this historical lens of like why beer wasn't allowed and wasn't like intersecting with it and how things have evolved now. And I mean, those are my favorite stories where it's about beer, but I mean, it's about culture and people and everything around it. And that's what kind of gets me excited. I can write, another 10 best stout story tomorrow if you want me to, but I don't know. I mean, ADHD brain, I don't really get excited doing the same thing time and time again. So I'm always trying to find new and different ways to kind of address this. And like I always say this to people, but the beer in your hand is the end of the story. Where does the story begin? It begins elsewhere. So
John R says Hulk Hogan was just there signing, I assume, cases of beer, but I don't know which
oh
beer.
yeah, so all of his like all American lager. I can tell you, at the grocery store by my house, there has been a giant stack of it sitting there, and I think, so I'm curious, maybe like two, three 12 packs have disappeared in like the last like 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know. People want outside political, making a political statement to drink Hulk Hogan beer.
Well, we had one. We
I
did
don't
have
know, brother.
we had garage beer in our Hanukkah box. So
We
another,
got
not wrestling, but close to it, right? Football.
Yeah, well, the Kelsey brothers. I mean, that brand. You guys talked about that brand, how that started off, right? That was a Braxton Brewing in Northern Kentucky created that brand and spun it off. The Kelseys invested in it. It's headquartered in Columbus, Ohio now, and I mean, it's yeah, their messaging is so fascinating because it's like they're really going against like it's like the trend cycles like being like the anti-IPA. It's like not an IPA, just beer. And it's like it's fascinating to go for IPAs becoming something that were so punk rock at one period of time and like so anti-mainstream to becoming something that's like mall rock for the average person. And it's just like an IPA dad or something. It's wild how quickly things go from like beloved to bashed to meme in like short period
And
of
how
time.
it works, right? If you there's the garage beer, sure, right? Like, yeah, fine. I'd have another one. Um, I've had a million of those and with different colors on the label, right? In various stages of playing golf or being at a concert or being on a boat, right? But like it's purely marketing and branding at that point. It's not like they've reinvented the American light lager with doing something so trend-setting and new and being able to get it.
Yeah,
It's the Kelsey
It's
brothers. They
just
rule.
the opposite of having, you can have a Bud Light or you can have a garage beer.
but the story of light lager is nothing but marketing. I mean, this. I mean, I did
Yeah.
surf the Atlantic a couple years ago with the Bud Light fiasco. It's really the light lager wars have been trying to find a way to like market to people. I mean, like Miller Lite was originally Gavinger's diet beer, and then marketed toward like calorie conscious women. They rebranded it in the 70s when Miller took it over, and like and it became a thing where they brought in athletes to do it, and it became like cool for dudes to drink light beer. And I mean, it's like Bud Light with like when they finally jumped in, like Spuds McKenzie, the party dog. I mean, it's really just like light lager is always a story of marketing. I mean, it's just like there's nothing that's like, you know, parsing 2 calories here, 2 calories there. Like honestly, it's like you can burn the 2 calories on like getting up from your desk and walking somewhere. I could spin circles right now if you're really that concerned about that. But
We
it's just
talk about that all the time.
yeah. It's like
Like uh, the new thing. I play a ton of golf, so I'm with the same group of people frequently. And or like Michelob Ultra or whatever it is like the current beer du jour of these people because it's the least caloric. And I'm like, if you walk down those stairs, you will find the delta between that and a Miller Lite. Like that's that's purely the reasoning. Oh, it's the healthiest one compared to like
yeah.
what? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's fascinating how the marketing drives so much of the light lager sales on there. And I mean, as a journalist, I've got to, I think the right way of phrasing this, diplomatic, cut through the bullshit, I guess, and see what's actually distinct and different about it. Like, it's finding different lifestyle moments. Like, the rise of Montucky cold snacks is nothing but like finding like this, like the light beer for outdoor lifestyle people. I mean, it's like you're always finding different ways, shapes, and forms for people trying to find that. Like hams became like the light lager for craft beer people in the Midwest to like go against like PBR and other things. I mean, it's what you adopt.
$2 at Slippery Slope
What,
in Chicago if you ever get over there.
Adam, what's your take on the light lager versus the marketing side of things from an halftime perspective?
Um, I mean,
Because you're in the buying, you see what you
we
see
do
the
sell.
sales, which is very different than in our perspective where we see kind of cultural trends, but you know the data. And that's, I think, that can sometimes skew
We
perception.
get a lot of requests for the regional stuff, and maybe light lager adjacent, but we get a lot of requests for like Rainier and Natty Boh, and I feel like all those kinds of beers are in the same genre also. But we saw a ton of Gansett, and we saw a ton um, of the bigger brands too. Garage Beer's been doing well. I wouldn't say it's like taken off yet. Um, we have a local brand from a friend who used to work at the brewery next to the store. His name's Brendan. He owns a they make one beer. It's called Skinny House Lager. It's like a crushable light lager. Same deal. Um, and it seems like he's kind of captured the local crowd a bit with that. We do pretty well with it. But across the board, it's not a bad category. It's maybe a little oversaturated, but not bad at all.
I mean, light lager. I mean, like the whole thing about the craft beer movement was like everyone, like we never stopped drinking light lagers as a country. Light lagers have always been what we've consumed. And not saying that we live in a bubble world with craft beer, but I mean, the reality is most people still drink on a volume basis. Light lagers, Mexican lagers, more so than no matter how much IPAs may have sort of like become like the synonym for craft beer. It's still a light lager nation, and like you're seeing it now, and like all the brands are coming out with like their, Bottle Logic has now like Logic Light in California. You've got like that what is it? I live in Columbus, Ohio. Like Columbus Brewing has like Ohio Light. Like they're trying to find a new generation local regional beer. Like the Natty Bows, like that had the Baltimore connection. People are trying to find like this new regional affiliation with craft with like these lagers, which is why, Gans's doing so well. It's got a great brand story. It's associated with New England, historic era. They've got great history
Oh,
memorabilia. The liquid's awesome. I mean, it's all these things all together. So I mean, same
It's beer you
story.
don't have to think about.
Yeah. And it's like, these light lagers give people a sense of like regionality in the same way that craft beer does to your local brewery. Like a light lager, the Rainier says you're from Seattle in the Northwest, it's kind of like where, the Hams, you're a Minnesota drinker, like Chicago,
Yeah,
like or
the icy
Midwestern.
light.
Yeah. Icy is like crushing it,
We
but
used to sell IC Light. We can't get anymore.
yeah.
I mean,
And isn't that
it's
like pre-prohibition? That's what it was like too, right? You connected to it was all still light lagers for the most part, but they were all regional light lagers. And it's funny because it's going back to that. They want to be able to connect. They don't want to support necessarily macro breweries, but they want to drink something in volume. You're not playing beer pong with a Fiddlehead IPA, probably.
It's
Maybe in
still only
Vermont.
like a buck or two more than a 6-pack of Bud, too, like 6-pack to 6-pack, which is an easier sell.
And from an economics per brewery perspective too, it's an easier beer to no, not necessarily easier. If you don't make a good light lager, it's going to be very apparent because there's nothing to hide
No
behind.
place to hide. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
somebody
so
on
it's
here.
so
Yeah, somebody on here was saying NA and THC drinks are taking more and more shelf space. THC drinks are where it's legally allowed, I guess. And the Farm Bill, it's really about all these are hemp-derived THC drinks. And I mean, the big challenge on there, I mean, is going to be like you're trying to basically like you're existing in a loophole that may be closed by the federal government at any period of time. And so I think from a delivery mechanism, like beverages are a great way to introduce people to THC that like to do that. You can moderate the dose if you're looking to do that in a legal and safe way in a much better fashion. But I mean, it's really about the legality. Most dispensaries are not set up with cold boxes to sell THC beverages, and beer stores and places like that are do have that, but it's really about the legalities behind that. Adam, are you guys selling THC in New York State? Like New York State,
It's a little bit gray right now, but yeah, we
exactly.
are. Um,
Off the
we
record.
we are tiptoeing, but yes, we do sell one brand, Cycling Frog, very well. Like it is a huge mover, but it's a lot of my wholesalers are ceasing sales for now until the state gives like firm
Now,
legislature on it.
now, when you say mover, how does that compare to one of your sales in beer that's also doing well? Is it a
Pretty
mover for just the small segment, or are they on?
I would say Cycling Frog. Oop, we lost Chad. Um, I would say Cycling Frog moves as well as the best brewery in my store, which is insane.
Wow.
Best craft brewery. We're not talking like Miller Coors here.
And what about seltzers? I feel like are on the downward trend. They were massive, and now they're starting to plateau. No, you guys all
They
shaking your
they
no, this
no
is
they
Todd's it's the theory of like the natural evolution of a product. It like gets found by a core group of enthusiasts, right? Whether you want to call them hipsters or like I think in seltzer cases, I don't have any data to back this up. Let's just call it like kind of like frat guys and girls in the South, right? And they got really, really popular among the like the party crowd, right? Like we want seltzer, it's tasty, it's light. I can have a million of them in the sun. Then it sort of finds a little bit of a wider mainstream popular like adoption, right? So it moves from frat kid to like millennial, like other generations who are having it outside in the beach. Then it's slows a little bit amongst those scene groups. So like the cool people who started with it, and then the next group, and that's it slows a little bit amongst the scene groups. But what you're missing there is that the rest of the market then catches on to it. It's like when you see a cool gadget that you thought was cool a few years ago in a TJ Maxx or in a big box store that you can't believe is there. The reason it's there is now because it's such a strong brand that it's finally hit scale. And my guess, and I think Josh is probably going to say something to this still tune, is that seltzer maybe it's leaving some of the um the craft breweries, but I think the big boys are doing fine.
I mean, I just did a story on this. I can tell you what's happening. Like Truly is declining in a big way. White Claw is getting bigger. Like I think like I think White Claw's got more than like a 60 share, which means like 6 of every 10 hard seltzers sold in America is a White Claw. White Claw is growing. Truly is declining. These big players are declining. Local and regional breweries that are focusing on taproom sales or focusing on small, becoming the local hard seltzer in their market are doing great. Everyone's not going to be doing great across the board, but for example, interviewed Evan from Green Cheek Brewing in California. Their lavender lemonade hard seltzer is 25% of their taproom sales in an average week, and they're a World Beer Cup winning brewer for medals. In Columbus, where I'm at, Seven Sons become like they've got their Kitty Paw hard seltzer, the local hard seltzer that everybody has around town. So you can find your market, but you can't be a national brand. You can be the best seltzer in your town. You can be a seltzer in the tap room. And it's imperative to have seltzer is still loved and desired in tap rooms, like 100%. A brewery, Weir Brewing in San Diego just opened up, and like they have like 8 or 9 hard seltzers on with their beers, and they're like people come in like I can't wait to bring other people in here that love hard seltzer too. Like we just think it disappeared, but it didn't. And there's still a lot of money to be made. It's still a multi-billion-dollar category. It's just people aren't drinking Truly, and I think it's just these ideas that we love a good downfall story in America. That's really it. That we
True.
love a good downfall, and
It catches like fire.
we wait for things to fall down, and then we celebrate its downfall. It's like it's finding its place within the market. It's not stratospheric in growth, in that same way, but it's always going to be important for people to have that in that same way, shape, and form. So
It's similar to the light lager story that we're talking about. It's breweries that embrace the seltzer have the opportunity to become their regional hard seltzer to take the market share away from the Trulies or the White Claws for the most part.
yeah, I'm trying to think if we can
All of our
find
brewery listeners, there's 2025's. We just laid out your market strategy for 2025. You're welcome.
it is
I was
all good. Here is a story I just did on hard seltzers.
Adam, where are you seeing from a data side of things, the seltzer trend? These conversations just go everywhere, Todd. Like we might start from Hanukkah beer, but like once we get our guests on, they just
we'll do a
now we're
seltzer
talking hard
box. We'll do a seltzer box next year.
We could do a pretty cool seltzer box. But
Would it be kosher? No, probably not. Maybe?
probably not, especially if
No, it has all the
Smoothie
artificial
seltzer.
flavors. No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much echoing what Josh said, and of course, as expected, like we sell most of our seltzer in the warmer months. It's a warm weather drink for sure. Mostly White Claw. In New York, we can't sell liquor or wine with beer. Everything we sell is malt-based fermented like beer. And our number one most requested item that we cannot sell is High Noon, which is
High
spiked
Noon,
with
yeah.
liquor.
It's not malt based.
Correct.
It's like a ready
And
to
the bigger boys also, I think, both Truly and White Claw came out with a true spiked with liquor seltzer, and people look for that, and we just have the traditional stuff. So I think seltzer's doing fine. We just can't sell all of it.
Yeah.
Adam, do you track requests? Do you have any system for if I come in and I'm like, hey Adam, I want High Noon. Do you quantify that at all? That'd be curious.
No, I mean we have a special request system where we take their name and number if it's something that I could feasibly get, but our staff knows like we can't sell liquor. High Noon is liquor. They're not even going to bother.
Yeah.
They're just going to give the customer the spiel.
But if I say, hey, I want Hill Farmstead, like
someone who doesn't know will write it down, and I'll reach out and break.
And then you'll say, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Josh, just how many beer packages do you get on a given week of just people wanting to get you to promote their brand? I know that's originally how I reached out. I didn't send you a package, but I was like, hey, Josh, can you feature us at, hey, can you look at what we're doing? Hanukkah, it's COVID. That was kind of our first interaction, I think. when we've connected a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like I think for me, during the height, if I'm writing a story and it's busy, it could be anywhere from like 5 to 10. I turn down a lot of packages just because it's not worth, I try to be honest with people. I'm like, like it's January 2nd. I'm not writing another dry January story again. I work months in advance. And so I'm just like, you know what? Like save your money. Don't give that to me. And like, which is not what people want to hear per se, but it's like I try to be honest. I mean, whereas when I was younger, I would have been like, oh, sure, give it all to me. But now I'm much more honest about like like if there's a story fit for me, do I want to drink this? Do I want to try it? Or if it's just kind of like another thing to stack up in my basement for my brother to come over and be like, can I have some beer? And I was like, sure. But I don't know. I mean, but I try to be honest and like, honesty doesn't always go over well. I guess.
So your UPS driver is very happy with you for turning down all of these beer packages, or like, here you go, please sign. Sorry, here you can have this.
I know yeah, everyone sends their beer differently. We'll put it like that. FedEx, UPS, USPS, blah 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 on there. But
Carrier,
I'm curious
carrier pigeon.
if it's a new brand, I could be curious to try it, but I just want to be on like, I'm working on very specific stories. So if you just want, I always tell people you can send it to me, but for future consideration, but it could be a year down the line, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, never, or something like that may make sense.
But now is the wrong time for me to pitch you my new NA beer that I really would like you to try.
I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for the NA beer market that's not going to bear out on there too. I mean,
Agreed.
it's you know, NA beer is bigger than NA beer was really big in the 90s as well. I like going back to stories in time when like Sharps No Duels came out. I mean, the stories you'd see back in the 90s, it was like having a beer without a buzz is easier than ever and blah blah blah. And you're just kind of like, what decade are we in? So the flavors are different much in the same way that the flavors are different for like what craft beer could be. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to like, I know there's a lot of optimistic predictions about being 5, 10, 20% of the market, but we thought craft beer was going to be 20% of the market and craft beer didn't hit that until our like drunk driving and like our laws change in Europe. That's a lot of the big things why NA beer, it's a lot more, the amount you can drink legally and still drive a car is a lot less in many European countries. We'll put it like
Same
that.
in Quebec.
Yeah, we don't have that same thing here. So it's like, you're not encouraged from a society to drink NA beer in that same way with repercussions. And I'm not endorsing drunk driving. I personally do not drive while drinking, but that's that. But it's just like there's so many factors that are going to make it tougher, I think, to make it 10%, 5% of the market even.
Heard it here
Well, any
first.
change in laws could be good for the old parent company of City Brew Tours here. Um, famous motto is "You drink, we drive." We drive,
Yes.
Chad. You picking that up? I think Chad. I think it's time to move to trivia. So we're gonna put you two through the ringer of some very, 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 very pointed questions.
And people at home can also play along.
These are, yeah, this is like, kind of your Jewish beer legitimacy is at stake here. It's also I'm gonna hedge this by saying I guarantee that the prep of this involved ChatGPT in a way that it probably was not intended for use. So anyone who takes issue with any of the answers, you could be more right than Chad. So
I checked every answer.
sure. So true or false? The largest Sufgan Yolk jelly donut ever weighed more than 50 pounds.
I would say people love a good Guinness record, so I would say yes.
Adam?
I'll say false because someone's got to be wrong.
I love that about you. 5 gallons of jelly, true, made in Israel.
Boom.
That's so much jelly.
That's a big donut.
50 pounds is like a kindergartner, right?
It's bigger than my daughter, so it's definitely It's definitely a heavy donut. All right.
Okay, Chad.
Okay. The Guinness World Record for the most latkes cooked in 1 hour is over 500. True or false?
I'll go true.
I'd say true. It's gonna be more than 500.
It's actually false.
Oh,
A team in Israel set this record using industrial-sized frying pans with 1,200 latkes in one
Wasn't it
hour.
over 500? Isn't that true?
Oh, 1 hour is over 500. Oh,
It's true. See?
you're right.
That's
I
why
can't
I'm
read
here.
my shit. I am sleep deprived. I have a newborn. Sorry.
Okay, this is a closest two, so we're gonna take number guesses. Pete Serwinsk, a 23-year-old bodybuilder, held the record or holds the record for the most latkes consumed in 8 minutes. How many did he consume?
47.
Like standard kind of like hamburger size latke.
47.
I will go 68.
Wow.
How did you know that?
How'd you know that, Josh? That was a very close answer. 46.
46.
I don't know.
Did you write an article on that?
Yeah, did you write a story on this?
You go with the number and you stick with the number.
All right. The world record for the largest menorah was set in what city?
Brooklyn.
Tel Aviv.
Ooh, it was New York, and it required
And
a
Tel Aviv.
and I think these answers.
Four cities tied, Chad.
No, it was Manhattan. It's 4-story building. It's true.
4-story building.
It was a 4-story building, and it was true, and it happened in Manhattan. So technically, you're wrong, Adam. But New York City is the city. So, though Brooklyn, if it was its own city, would be what, the second largest, fourth largest city?
Fourth. It could be different, but now fourth or something like that.
All right. So this is not a true or false. This is just another closest
and it's
two.
our final. It's the final.
This is our finest one.
You have a
Most expensive dreidel in the world costs how much money retail? You want to buy it?
3,000.
$112,000.
3.5 million, Daniel. That is one hell of a dreidel. I was doing some jewelry research. Justin Jefferson, football player, wears these insane diamond chains, and those are worth $1 million, and they are like it like blinds you from watching your own TV. $70,000 for the dreidel, so 3.5 million would have been a little high.
New
That's-
York jeweler.
Yeah, 18 karat white gold, 222 modern round brilliant diamonds.
People love ostentation. That's the reality.
If I was like a billionaire, would I buy a $70,000 dreidel? Probably. I feel like that's one of the things I'd be like, I have to have it.
Would you, on your neck, or would it
No,
be?
no. I would bring it out like once a year, just like, oh, let me go get my $70,000 dreidel because you've come to my house to play dreidel. Because I think at that level of opulence, that stuff doesn't really move the needle. Okay. I have one final question, then I'll let Chad ask a final question. My question is for both of you. I think you both probably drink a zillion different styles of beer from a zillion different breweries in the world. You just finished working, you walk into a Magic bar, and you can ask for any beer, and it's a Thursday, it's kind of rainy out, it's just a normal day. What beer are you asking from your Magic bartender?
For a magic bartender, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been gravitating toward like clean, crisp, like West Coast IPAs, stuff like that. Like, I love a good like Fatheads, Headhunter, something along that vein. It's been something that I've been digging on. If it's a bar with like, great draft service, like maybe a nice, like perfectly poured Czech style Pilsner, probably one of those two, depending like what's on tap that day.
My my pretentious answer would be like a OGH Hill Farmstead Czech Pilsner, like a Poetica. My
Number
somewhat
3.
not pretentious answer would be like unpasteurized Pilsner Urquell. Like, take me to Europe and I'll take one of those.
I love that. Chad, you got one more to take us home.
All right. So we're City Brew Tours. Our whole thing is going to different cities and different states and checking out their craft beer scene. Most underrated craft beer scene that we should check out next.
US or Canada or included or
Ooh, got one in Canada and the US. Either
I mean,
or.
I still think I love Montreal's my favorite cities. I love going to Montreal and drinking beer. Montreal has such like a rich heritage from like, French and British and everything all together. Just creates this like really compelling like drinking scene. I think it's one of my favorite places to go ride a bike in the summertime and go crush beers and eat your weight in croissants.
And you can get some Montreal style bagels if you haven't had those, because those are
Yeah, they're kind of mid.
I love a Montreal style
I
bagel. You
agree
guys
with
are
him.
Fresh,
I mean,
fresh out of the oven, they're amazing. 5 hours later, not so much.
oh, that's terrible. No, you don't want a cold. I'm talking about like at the peak freshness.
It is true.
Well, Four Origins is an awesome brewery. We do have a franchise. Our first franchise of City Brew Tours was Montreal. Before we even knew what franchising was, they're like, "Hey, we start a City Brew Tours in Montreal." We're like, "Sure, let's figure out how to do it."
Daniel's going on his first City Brew tour on Saturday in Phoenix.
Ooh, exciting! They probably have Holly as your guide,
If you
Yeah.
have Holly as your guide, you have to tell her I said hello.
as well as
That's
myself.
you promise that. Okay. Adam, where are we going?
I don't know a ton of, like, personally have been to beer markets in Canada. Montreal is one that I have been to, so I will second that. Um, it was great. There wasn't much going on in Toronto. Those were the two places I hit. For the US, I've been loving the greater Philadelphia area. It's been great. You have Tired Hands in Forest and Maine. Forest and Maine's like one of my favorite breweries ever at this point. Um, a
Love
bunch of
City.
great bars.
Yeah.
What'd you
Love
say?
City Brewing is terrific too.
Home City Rules.
Um, and you have like Monk's Cafe and Memphis Tap, like those crazy bars down there. It's just a great food and drink city in general.
Memphis Tap is closed down,
Is it?
replaced by Meeting House, which is calling some tired hand vets open it up. And Meeting House is terrific. Like they make like a handful of beers and great food and stuff. Same place, but I mean, just like it's a marvelous thing to go see and do.
Is Fermentary
Nice.
Form still kicking around in Philly?
It was last time, but it was a rainy day, and I will tell you the charm of walking down an alley and having to drink a saison in a rainy day in an alley is something I would have been more charmed by in my 20s and my 40s, I guess.
I'm from Chicago. We love an alley, so
I love an
I'm
alley
in.
too, but I don't want it. There's like, I think in craft beer in 2025, it's hospitality has to be front and center. And I don't, the days of getting service with a sneer and just being given something in a concrete tap room and sitting down on those uncomfortable ass stools and like doing that stuff. I mean, those days are over. I mean, hospitality's got to be king.
Todd, what about
Mhm.
you? On most underrated beer scene?
I give the same answer probably every time, and it's for me it's Baltimore. I like was I know it's this is I don't it's pun unintended, but I was so charmed when I went to Baltimore to drink beer. Like one of my first work trips was to Baltimore, and every beer I had I loved, and the people who work in all the breweries are super cool. And I was expecting Baltimore has an image problem, I think. So when you're asking about underrated, um, I think Baltimore always comes to the top of my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also say like underrated. I sort of think that Portland, Maine is an underrated beer city, even though like people say every time I go, it's more and more appealing to me. So,
I would say the last
but
one
it's
I would think
Baltimore.
of, like if you love lagers, Austin is kind of like your lager drinking wonderland. From Austin Beer Garden to Live Oak and beyond. Like, I was there last year.
Live Oak, so good.
Yeah, 2023. I would say Austin's great, go around there, the climate's hot, the lagers are awesome, and I mean it's a great place
If
to
you
go.
want a city brew tour,
And
What?
go to the Brew Tour. And I just came back from Houston, and I could not believe the beer coming out of Houston. And Houston, I would say for me is my answer. You've got breweries literally blocks away from one another, and the beer at each of them are incredible. You've got NASA engineers that have opened up breweries. We featured them, I think, couple last year. We did a Houston box, and it was awesome. And
Mhm.
I would say go check out Houston from a craft beer scene. All right. I think Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah 2024 is a wrap. Joshua, thank you.
gentlemen,
Adam, thank
thank
you
you.
guys
That was
so
fun.
much for joining us this evening. And for everyone out in the audience, thanks so much for participating in our Happy Hanukkah box. If you had fun with this box, we do have a City Brew Tours Beer Club where you can get monthly beers and live streams every month with our host Jonathan, who's the man. He's doing the 12 beers of Christmas right now, which if you're looking for more beer, we do have a 12 beers of Christmas that we still have a couple of boxes left. I think there may be like 10 boxes left. So you might be able to snag some of those if you want some more beer. But thank you. Thanks everyone. Todd, pleasure as
As
always.
always,
I'll
Chad.
see you in not even 365 days sooner.
See you then. Thanks, fellas.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
Be
Thank
well.
you.
Have a great night.